So in this session, I'm going to demonstrate how to deploy our application to or Flask application. So you've got a Flask application, you've got it to operate, and you have it displaying what you want in the application. Right now we have a very simple one. So what we need to do next is make an account on Python Anywhere. So I'm going to go there next. And if you go to pythonanywhere.com and go to their login, if you don't have an account yet, if you go to their main page, it'll give you a link, and you can create a beginner account. The beginner account is fine, and once you create that, you'll log in, and let's see, and then go to the dashboard. And the dashboard is where we can load files and set up a web app. We can only set up one web app with the free account. That's fine. That's all we need. And open up bash consoles to send commands to our server. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go to files. You can also get to files here. We need to load our file in the root directory of our folder. So rgarner7 is my root folder. And so this is where I need my files. And the easiest way to do that is just create a new directory, if it will let me do it. Oh, and then type it in here. And so let's see, I'm going to make it the same as my application. And so I had this one is simple local Flask. What was the full name? Simple local Flask application. It's right here. So maybe what I'll do is I'll just copy this name. So that it's the same. It could be anything, but it just kind of helps me know what I actually have if I make it the same. So now if I go back up to the root directory, I can see my directory that I just created is here. And if I click inside of here, I can now upload files here. So I'm going, this program that I just made is just one program file. So this one's a fairly easy install. And so I'll bring up this one file that I have for this application, upload it. And then the next thing I need to do is I need to have a virtual environment just like I did before. And Python Anywhere uses a slightly different virtual environment than I'm going to delete this one because this is what I had from before. So in here, we're going to need to create a virtual environment. Now, since Python Anywhere uses a slightly different version for a virtual environment than venv, we're going to open up a console here. And so there's this option to open up a bash console here, and we'll click on that. You can only have two consoles open at the same time. So let me show you what happens if you have more than one open, since that can become a problem. So now I have, if you're in your files and you try to click open a bash console here and you get this message, console limit reached, click on this thing that says kill some consoles in your consoles page. And you probably don't need all of these opens. You can only have 2 at a time on the free account. So just close out all those consoles, go back to where you were, and then reopen it, and then you'll be able to open up a bash console. So what's a bash console? It's just like the Windows console or the command console you have in Windows, or the terminal that we're working on in Visual Studio Code. It's a place where you can put commands and it'll execute them. So what do we type here? Well, there's documentation here. Deploying an existing Django, or actually we don't want Django, we want deploy a Flask app. So I think it's this one. So here we have instructions on set up a Flask application on Python Anywhere. So you can search for that documentation and deploy Flask on Python Anywhere, and it'll give you instructions here. And it gives you instructions for setting up your virtual environment. So we've already opened up the bash console, and I'm going to do this so that we can see both. And we're going to execute this command here. So I'm just going to copy that. And what this is going to do, and since my application was made in 3.9, I believe, I'm going to change that. Actually, what I'll do is I'll look here, and when I ran this, it usually tells me what version I'm in. Somewhere. Yeah, it looks like it's in 3.8 for mine. Yours may say 3.9. If it says 3.9, then what you're going to want to do is change this to be whatever the version is of the Python that your application was made in. And when I complete this, this will actually set up a virtual environment. And you can see actually it's set up so that now I'm actually it's actually running already in my virtual environment. I can see that. If it doesn't say that, you can also execute the work on command, my-virtual env. So in this command, this is the name of the virtual environment we're creating. This is the version that we're using. And so it doesn't change anything here because we're already in the virtual environment, but that's how you can specify that you want to be in that virtual environment. Once that's up and running, we are going to do a pip install Flask so that we have that library available to our program. So now it's doing the same thing we did before we made our application. We had to create a virtual environment and load pip. If I now go back to my files, I will see here under virtual environments, if I click on that, and in my virtual environment, I believe it ends up being under bin. Yeah, you can see, let's see. Yeah, there it's loaded Python 8. And then I have to find where my oh, there's Flask. So it installed Flask in this virtual environment. Let's see what it has on lib. Yeah, there's the side packages folder. And actually that's where it's going to pick up Flask. Up here in this virtual environment. You don't normally have to look at those. It'll have loaded all those for us. Let me maximize this so this is our virtual environment, and that's where all that we just created. I'm going to go back up to here, and then go into my Flask local application. And I can see here I've made, the structure of this is kind of odd. This is the directories that are in this folder, and this is the files that's in this folder. In a, we're used to seeing in our file explorers the folders and the files mixed up, but in Python Anywhere they split them out. It's okay. It's the same thing. It's just that they're split up in two different sides. So here's where our main program is, and it's in this directory. So we're going to need this directory. So I'm going to copy this so that I have the directory name, and then I'm going to go over to web. And over in web, we're going a few things. One, this is our reload button. So once we have everything configured, we can click on this button to deploy the application or redeploy it. And then here, there's this button, and they set it up so that you have to come in here every 3 months to keep the site running. And that's just so that they don't have, websites that aren't being used when they're giving you the access for free. So every time you come in here, just click this button, and it'll update, how long your program can run. And gives you some information on your traffic and how your site's doing. But what we are interested in is here in the source code. We need to make sure that the source code directory is what we just copied. So I'm going to paste that in and then click change so that now my source code is pointing to where my source code application is. For my working directory, I'm going to put working directory be just the root directory of my Python Anywhere account. And then we have this WSGI configuration file. Now, we're going to click on that, and that's going to open up this file. And we need to verify a few things. One, for the project home, this needs to also be that directory. So I'm going to paste that in there so that it knows that this is where the project is. And then this will, if it's not in the system path, it adds the system path. You're not going to need to change that. And then here, what we're going to do is we need to make sure that this name here is the same as what we named our application in our code. And in our case, because we named our app here, this will work fine. So, and the reason why they have to do this is WSGI, which is the server for Python Anywhere, is always going to look for the application name to be application. Now, we could kind of bypass all this by just changing this to application, but usually we have, it ends up looking like this. And then the other thing is that we have to say from main import app. So this has to match the name of your program. So main.py is the name of my program. So this has to be here. So the name of the program has to be here. The name of our application has to be here. This has to be application. And then up here, you have to have the directory where your application is located. So once you have all those configured properly, you can save that. And then we can go back to our web console here. And these then should all be set up correctly. And then the other thing is we need to add a reference to our virtual environment. So I'm going to go back to our files, find where my virtual environments are. And in this case, I changed my virtual environment name to my virtual environment. So I'm going to click on that and just copy this path as well. Once I have that, I'm going to go back to web and then make sure that this is pointing to my virtual environment. So I'll just delete that, paste in the new one, and make sure that that matches the path to where my virtual environment is. So once that's done, then your error logs will show up with these files. You can actually click on those if you have any errors or problems and see what they are. And you don't need to do anything with this at this point. We don't have any static files, but if we did, we will have to set that directory. Later on, when we learn how to use static files, we'll have to update this to where the static file folder in our application is. And in our case, this, just to make, to show you what that would normally look like, it's going to typically be your source code directory, and then it's going to be, all right, let me escape out of that. Yeah, static. So it's going to be your source code directory / static. So it'll look like that when we have one of those. And what that would end up looking like is eventually in Simple Flask, we would have a new folder called static. And then we also have, oops, the wrong place. It goes in here. So our application often ends up looking like this. We have your main program, a static folder, and a templates folder all next to each other. And therefore, this needs to point to that static folder. So once we have that, we should be able to just hit reload. And then we can go to this link. And there we go. It says, hello, Rob. So that's a deployment of a simple application. When we make more elaborate applications, I'll review this and show how to deploy those. But that's basically how you can deploy your simple Python Anywhere application. Thank you very much.